Well, then when we open our OnlyFans, it'll be important to have that following too.
We would crush. That's all I'm gonna say.
What?
We would crush. That's all I'm gonna
Oh, definitely crush. We already have our first cover photo. Welcome to this week's episode of our podcast.
say. Yes. Welcome.
It's a little beautiful where Ty is. He had a long commute today. It's a little stormy where I am. Other than that, it's nice and comfy and cozy. So what's up, Ty?
Oh, not too much. Just living the dream out here on this beautiful island that I'm living on.
What hemisphere are you in?
I believe this is the northeastern corridor.
Got it. I also believe you just made that up.
I did.
Is that a thing?
I don't think so. Just made that one completely up.
That's all right. Is it called the living room or the at-home office?
This is called the $400 chair that I bought for work.
Oh, nice. I hope they reimbursed you for that one.
They actually did. Yeah, that's why I
No
got.
way.
Yeah, they gave us all a $400 stipend for work from home stuff.
Yeah.
Just bought a chair, $400 chair.
That's great. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about how to vet a coach or trainer or how to find a gym for you. And then we're going to talk about tracking, and that is around nutrition mostly. We can talk about fitness a little bit, but I think talking about nutrition will be our primary target. And then we have a book review.
Yes, we do.
The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Yes.
Nice. All right, so Ty, who was your first fitness coach that you remember?
The first fitness coach that I remember, I'm trying to go back on this one. I would take it all the way back to high school. When I was in high school, I did P90X.
Oh, nice. That's Tony Horton.
Tony Horton. He's the first fitness coach that I remembered. Obviously not in real life, but virtually.
I thought you might have gone to like high school weight room with Vitri.
I was going to say Vitri as well.
We did that workout at CrossFit Westchester.
I was torn. I don't know. I wouldn't say any when we went to CrossFit Westchester, since we weren't like members there, they weren't coaches for us.
Right.
I don't know if that would really count, but the first person that I was maybe inspired by, I guess, would be, Tony Horton via the PDs, and then Vitri in high school, definitely. But then, I didn't really get like an actual coach until later after high school.
I think my answer would probably be the same. So Vitri in high school, but it took me probably 2 or 3 experiences to realize that coaching was bad in high school.
Yeah, a lot of time in hindsight, it definitely.
It wasn't the worst, right? It could have been worse. There were people there who specialized in strength and conditioning, which was kind of cool. So I appreciated that it wasn't just my football coach or baseball coach or swim coach just writing things and telling me to do stuff. And there was some oversight.
Yes. I mean, I would just stop and just say the fact that we had a strength and conditioning class is pretty damn cool in and of itself. Regardless of like what was going on in it, the fact that we had that option was pretty cool.
So you brought up strength and conditioning coach, right? So that's a certification.
Yeah.
So one of the notes that I had is how to vet a coach. What certification, if any, do they have?
That's a good one. Certifications are definitely, you don't want to put too much weight in a certification because anybody can study and pass a certification exam. All it says is that you put time into the thing, that you're at least interested enough, you're at least passionate enough to pay the fee and study for the test. And anybody can do that. So I don't want to put too much weight into a certification, but it at least says you do have some base level of interest and assuming knowledge as well, so if you pass the test.
Yep. So the CSCS is cool because that requires a bachelor's degree. So nobody can have that doesn't have at least a bachelor's degree.
In
But
anything, though.
I'm sorry?
In anything. It could be
In anything, yeah, correct. But one of the things that I think is interesting is, as far as I'm aware, the only training certification, at least major training certification, that requires hands-on observation of training is the CrossFit cert, the level 1.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, to be honest with you. I do have my CSCS,
Uh-huh.
and that didn't require anything other than taking a test, really. That's all it requires, is you having that bachelor's degree and then you taking a test and passing the test.
Yeah, so
in theory, you could have a bachelor's degree in, like, I don't know, something completely unrelated, psychology maybe.
yeah.
And then you don't even study and you just get really lucky and take the test and you pass, and you could have
C for everything, and now you're a trainer.
Yeah, in theory. You probably
So-
wouldn't pass the test if you didn't know anything.
So you have the NASM, right? The National Academy of Sports Medicine. You have ACE, which is American Council of Exercise, and there are a few more like that, but you're right. The only barrier to entry is a wallet and some time.
Yes.
Now, in the level 1, they have you actually coach. They watch you coach, but you coaching someone is not part of the assessment.
Right. The assessment is just a test at the
Yep.
end, multiple choice test, which so is the CSCS. It's just a multiple choice test. That's interesting though. So for the CSCS, you do have to put in a considerable more amount of time to study for the test. I would argue that for the CrossFit level 1, at least from my perspective, when I took it, you could just show up and pay attention, and they would teach you everything you need to know.
Yep.
So on the one hand, CSCS, it's just time. On the other hand, CrossFit level 1 is a lot less time because it's only 2 days, but you do have that hands-on component. So it's kind of like if the CrossFit level 1 was like a month-long course,
Yeah.
or like a semester that you had to take in college, that would be like the ideal type of certification, right?
Yeah, so one of the continuing education training that I did was through the Kilgore Academy, Lon Kilgore. He's just like an exercise physiologist. I say just like, he's a pretty well accomplished exercise physiologist. And to get my credits, I had to videotape myself coaching, reflect on my performance, and submit it for credit.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty nifty. And they graded it really fast online.
That's interesting. I just realized as we're saying this, though, we totally forgot about the OPEC certification as well.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring that up too, because I know that it exists and I know that they look at your programming, but I don't know if they look at your coaching.
So I did do the OPEC certification, and what was the reason why it just came to me is because I said like a semester course in college, which essentially is what the OPEC course is. It could take you anywhere from 3 to 6 or 9 months. You go at your own pace, but it is a big time investment. They look at your programming, like you said, and there is, if I recall correctly, there's at least one scenario where you have to video yourself walking somebody through an assessment and like kind of leading them through this. I wouldn't necessarily say it's coaching, although I guess kind of, you're just walking them through a movement assessment and kind of guiding them through it, but you're not coming up with the movement assessment. It's very basic movements. All the cues are like given to you, like what you're looking for. So I don't know if that's coaching per se, but you do have to videotape yourself interacting with a client and all that.
Yeah, I don't want to write off classical traditional college education. But to me, looking back over time, I would rather spend money on an OPEC cert and 2 or 3 other really niche, in-depth certifications, and even some training on business instead of going to school for exercise science.
100%. Let me be clear. We both went for exercise science. And I would argue that was one of the poorest decisions of my life. But I would say it definitely gives you a foundation, at least
Yeah.
in certain things. It gives you a different perspective to look at things,
Yep.
right? Instead of just relying solely on your, what's it called? Just like your experience in the gym, what you see, anecdotal stuff.
Hmm.
Instead of just relying on that, you kind of have more of a scientific like background.
And they do teach you, right? Because you have principles of strength and conditioning, and there are different categories of college classes to teach you, but I think they're drastically spread thin because it has to fit a 15-week curriculum.
Yes, there were two courses that I thought were really good that we took. One was a biomechanics course, and the
Mm.
other one that I really liked, I forget what it was called, but it was the one that like preps you for the CSCS. It had what's his name? Ed. Ed was the professor's first name. I can't remember his last name. But it was like a strength and conditioning course, basically.
Right.
And I thought that was maybe the best course. But like you're saying, I would rather have gone to school for business,
Yeah.
got an OPEX cert,
Hmm.
and I mean, I think that would have been the best way to go, personally. Yep.
So, in my opinion, the coach has to have a credential. I don't care what it is, but for them to be insured, they need to show a base minimum level of experience, and that is a current certification.
Yes. I agree. I think that's fair.
So, what's the next thing that matters to you? If you're meeting someone off the street, you're doing a free intro with them, you're sitting down and talking to them, deciding whether you should work with them or not.
So I have a couple of things here. Nothing. It's nothing too hard, like you were just getting at with a certification,
Hmm.
but also I think equally important. And one of the things I have listed here are basically, do they come across as someone who is basically a know-it-all or open-minded? You
Yeah.
know, I think I don't remember exactly what how the saying goes, but it's something along the lines of, you know, the closer you get to being a master at something, the more you realize that you don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And I think that really rings true, at least in the sense of being, like I said, open-minded. So when I see somebody in any discipline, but you know, we'll stick to the gym, saying that there's only one way to do something, or this
Yep.
is the best program, or the only, you know, approach or fix to your problems, that's when I start. That's a red flag for me. That's a huge red flag, regardless of what it is. Even if I agree that the thing that they're saying is a good thing, you just have to be aware enough that it's not the only thing, and it's not appropriate 100% of the time in all scenarios with everybody.
So I'm going to put a word to it. I'm going to use the word rigidity.
Okay.
So if they have one program, one diet, one exercise, that's how it is. That's how it's always going to be. I agree with you. I can't like express this enough across all industries
Yes,
because
exactly.
different people, different program, different diet, different body type. There's so many things that go into it. There are like, I would argue that there are principles of strength and conditioning that are true all the time, no matter what.
Principles. Yeah.
Right. But how you handle those principles is up to you. So I think that you should also have the availability, if this person is training people, I think having them be open to you talking to their other trainees is a
That was on
green
my,
flag.
that was on my list too. Not how you articulated it, but more so what are their other trainees? What are they saying and how are they acting?
Testimonials.
Yeah. Testimony, not necessarily anything formal, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you have a chance to interact with them, how are they? Like, are they very positive about their experience? Are they negative just in general? Like, might not be directly associated to the trainer, but it could, you know, it could be part of it.
Yeah, and I would like to point out too that people tend to stick with people of their own kind, right? So if I go to a gym and people look and act like me, maybe that works out, but don't let that stop you from working with a good trainer or a good coach. You
Yeah.
know, just because you don't feel like you fit in immediately doesn't mean you don't actually fit in. So your commonality with people is that you like to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's one thing that almost everyone should be able to find in common.
Yeah. Agreed.
So, I mean, I had a couple other notes down, like how healthy is your trainer? That's important to me.
That's super important. I think if I'm picking myself a trainer, I'm absolutely going to look at like how do they look and how are they living their life, you know?
Yeah, I think that's more important to me. How are they living their life? If they have a gut, or they're overweight, I don't really care so much as long as I know that they have a movement practice.
Yeah, well, also like where are they coming from too? They might have a
Yeah.
gut, but it might be a much smaller gut than a year ago.
Right. And that's something I'll never know until I commit already.
You wouldn't, yeah. But
But
no,
finding out what they do is super important.
I would be lying if I said that I didn't look at how they physically appear, because that's a
Yeah.
fairly good indication of how somebody is doing. But also, there's plenty of people who look super healthy and are just like hopped up on like soda and candy all day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Genetics are real. So
So from there, I would put that into a professionalism category, right? So do they walk the walk a little bit?
yeah,
Are they non-rigid? Do they sound like people you could have a cup of coffee with on Friday or Thursday? Someone you would actually want to hang out with. Um, what do their clients have to say about them? How do their clients look? And then I put cost. I want somebody, for me, they have to be above cheap. I don't necessarily want to pay. So if I'm working with a trainer one-on-one, Ty, like you're my trainer, I don't want you to say, "Oh, it's $20 an hour for a personal training session." If
yeah,
you work at a Globo gym and I'm paying the Globo gym and they're like, "Oh, it's $20 an hour for personal training," I'm a little more likely to lean on that because it's a big corporate blah
yeah,
blah blah entity. But if there's an individual trainer training that much, this isn't, they can't make a living off of that.
yeah, for sure. They can't make a living off of that. I think price is a fair one to include. That would be the same. I don't know how somebody who doesn't know anything about the industry would perceive that, but I would definitely be looking bare minimum, anybody charging like 60 or 70 bare minimum.
Yeah.
You know? Like
And the
that's
same is true for that top end. I don't want anyone coming in telling me it's going to be, $200 an hour for the first whatever. Too expensive to me means that this person, they're not for me. They're
yeah.
not my kind of trainer.
Yeah, also, yeah, for sure. There could be some sort of business practice going on there where they know you're not going to stick around, so they're just trying to get as much out of you in a couple sessions as they can. Who knows? But yeah, there's a sweet spot. There's a sweet spot for price, and for me, it's probably somewhere between that 60 to 100
Yeah.
range, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly what I would want to pay. I mean, it's a little different. Like a business mentor, I could see the rate being a little bit higher for like one-on-one time.
Yeah,
But you can't buy back your health. You can't. It's impossible.
yeah.
So this is more of an investment in yourself than it is a cost. Like, oh, I have to pay $70 an hour for 2 or 3 days a week. Like you can literally regain 5, 10, 15 years of your life from working with a good coach. And if you work with a bad coach, you can lose it.
Yeah, and there's one more thing I would put into the professionalism category that we kind of touched on already, kind of deals with open-mindedness, but I'll just throw it in there. And that is if there are other trainers in the gym or if there are other gyms nearby, how does your trainer talk about those?
Oh, that's a great point.
You know what I
A
mean?
great point.
What is their relationship like with those people? But not necessarily, you don't have to be buddy buddy, but how do they speak of their peers basically? If there's somebody who's just talking down on everybody else in their gym or more likely other gyms around them, then that's a red flag for me. Anyways, it's not open-minded.
Yeah.
Uh, it has that know-it-all feel to it, and in any profession, that's not a professional way to carry yourself.
No, that's a scarcity mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
A scarcity mindset. So that's something that I would say you're looking for a more evolved trainer. And as an adult, I feel like I want a trainer who's a grown up like me.
Yeah.
I say like me, like I don't like watching cartoons and eating cereal on a Saturday morning, but I want somebody who's a little bit just more relaxed, low key.
Yeah. And I think if you're listening to this and you're saying, okay, well, how exactly do any of these things tie into someone being a good trainer or not? Like you could be a great trainer and talk really bad about everybody, right?
Yeah.
Why can't you have both? But I think just from our personal experiences, we each have about 10 years in this industry, just being around, you notice correlations, and that's
Yeah.
all it is. These are just correlations that we're picking up on. Generally, the good trainers and the good coaches tend not to talk bad about people all the time behind their backs and stuff like
I
that.
would say I would put them in the best category,
Yeah.
right? Because if you worry about what other people are doing, you're not focusing on your own, you don't need to be like that,
Yeah.
to be the best.
Yeah. So I agree with our list here. Having a certification, not being super rigid. Um, what are their clients? How are they acting? What are they saying? How are they feeling? And that open, not talking bad about your peers, basically. I
Yeah,
think
how they interact with their peers.
that's a pretty good list, right?
That's a solid list, and I'm gonna start paying attention to those things every time I'm with a client.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
Perfect.
great. Well, that's a perfect segue to our sponsor, Training by Ty and Anth. If you're
Right.
looking for a great trainer or a great coach, send us an email at the link in the bio and we'll get you all set up with some programming or some virtual training.
Absolutely.
Or we'll fly to wherever you are and personal train you 3 days a week on our private jet.
Yeah, that just requires you to buy us a private jet.
Listen, the price is right.
Exactly. Or you could come to me on this beautiful island that I'm on right now.
In the northeastern corridor.
Yeah.
Don't worry, he'll supply the chair. All right, let's talk about nutrition a little bit. So I think that in my life, I struggle most with nutrition, and I try to compare myself to the ultimate nutrition, and I fall flat when I should be looking at the majority of people in the world where I feel like I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you're somebody who is just, quote unquote, a health junkie in any sense of the word, you're probably doing better than the majority of the world when it comes to nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
just because you're probably at least aware of what you're,
Yep.
you know. But I would agree 100%. If we've been doing this for a little over 10 years, the first like 7, I had almost zero focus on nutrition at all. It was just all the exercise and the training,
Yeah.
thinking that was all that was necessary. And then definitely over the past 2 years, maybe 3, but certainly over the past like 2 years, I've just become way more into the nutrition side. Still, I struggle with it. It's still the biggest thing I struggle with, and I'm not an expert, but I've definitely started to take it more seriously, and I wish I had been doing that the whole time.
Do you track your meals?
I love this. So I saw the question that you wrote was tracking, do it or don't. And my immediate response was yes, actually, which might be a little controversial to some people.
Yeah.
I would say for me, tracking was huge. Now, I know tracking like MyFitnessPal is a great source. If something has a barcode, you can scan it, it pops up. If it doesn't have a barcode, you can still type it in and search for it. Type in apple, it'll tell you how much is in an apple, how many carbs, fats, proteins. So, MyFitnessPal, using that, not necessarily to restrict yourself if you're trying to get started with tracking here, but instead literally just tracking what you are consuming, just so you know what you're
Yep.
consuming. And so that's always my first piece of advice with anybody getting into nutrition is just record what you're taking in. Don't alter what you're taking in. Try not to let it influence you in any way, but just record it.
Eat that cookie and write it down. It's
And write
okay.
it down. It is absolutely fine. And if you do that, I mean, minimum should be a week. But if you're just getting started and nutrition seems like this daunting thing, then try to do that. It could be for a month. Who cares? Just
Yeah.
get used to recording it so you know what's coming in, and then you can make decisions from there. That's my
Yep.
my personal view on it.
Yeah, when I look at this and I talk to our clients about it, we talk about awareness first. So you're aware of what you do, and normally you eat about the same thing every week, pretty
Yeah.
similarly. So once a quarter, we try to recommend a 2-week stint of everything, but only once a quarter.
Of everything?
So
What do you mean?
track everything that
Oh,
you eat.
track everything. Gotcha.
Yep. So if you're doing it more often, that can lead to excessive and unhealthy behavior, and you're just checking in with yourself. For example, with exercise too, you should take a week off once a quarter, just straight up off, no gym. You can go outside, be active, just leave, clear your head, get a different perspective and clear it out. So I put together a stepwise approach that I want to walk through with you and see how you feel about it. So I put first thing, same as you. What foods are you eating? Just the name, not the amount.
Okay.
Apple, peanut butter, bread, taco from Taco Bell. So foods is the most simple first step, and you can do it on a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
So my next step would be to measure out or pay attention to total number of calories or how much of each food you're eating.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's good. I think when I was just speaking here, I was talking about step number 2, but I do agree that step number 1 is even a better place to start.
Yeah, and that can be as simple as you take out your phone and you just take a picture of everything that you eat. It doesn't tell you how much. It doesn't tell you, well, actually it does tell you when, because all pictures are time-stamped because technology. Actually, Zuckerberg could probably tell you what you're eating better than you could.
Yeah, Google Picture Analytics AI can probably tell you
what your macro splits are.
Exactly.
We should just write to Google about this. But so total calories is going to be like the next step for me. And when we talk about how much, when you first start tracking, don't care.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. Just pay attention to it.
And the thing is, like, that's interesting is because when it comes to calories, there's always these arbitrary recommendations that are out there of how many calories you should be eating, but it can vary so much from person to person. Even if you have the same body type, or even if you're similarly active as well, how you've conditioned your body over the past however old you are.
Yeah.
All those years, right? If I'm 28, how I've conditioned my body over the past 28 years greatly determines the metabolism that I have right now. So I might be better on 2,200 calories. Somebody who maybe looks like me and is similarly active, that person might need 3,200 calories, but it's like, a lot of these recommendations are arbitrary. So when you're tracking to see how many calories you're consuming, don't worry what it says.
Yeah, the more generic the recommendation, like the less applicable it is to you.
Yes.
Eat 2,000 calories a day. Why? I'm active. I'm not active. I work out. I don't work out. So total calories is the first thing that we're actually going to pay attention to. So when we talk about foods, if that's where you stop your journey, my only recommendation, and this is going to be a constant, is more veggies. Just make sure every picture you have has something that's a vegetable. Now, when we talk about total calories, same thing. I want to start seeing some vegetables in there. That's like, if you eat a lot of vegetables, you're going to be a healthy individual.
Yeah, chances are, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So then after we're talking about quantity, how many calories a day is right for you? There are 1,000,001 calculators out there. It doesn't matter which one you use. Just stick to the same one for precision, not necessarily accuracy.
Yeah. What do you think about this, though, going back to what I was just saying? You don't know how many calories you're eating. You don't know how many calories you should be eating, but you start tracking and you figure out how many you are eating. You still don't know how much you should, though. And so maybe let's just go with the easiest goal is to lose weight. I would argue that you don't even need a calculator.
Yeah.
You simply look at what it is that you're consuming. You know that you've been eating 3,000 calories a day and just aim for start off with like 200 less.
Yeah. A 10% decrease is a solid move.
Yeah. So I would argue you don't necessarily even need a tracker or a calculator. I mean, because I've tried them in the past and you get so many different results, like you're saying, which is why you got to use the same one. You're not even sure if that one makes any sense, though. I think instead of going from not knowing how much you're eating to whatever the calculator says, you're going to have better luck figuring out what you're eating and just lowering it if that's
Yeah.
your goal.
Yeah, for sure. That is definitely a better next step than what I described. So it's simpler. Just eat less and your weight will go down. Eat more and your weight will go up.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say don't even worry about a daily total. I would worry about a weekly total when we're looking at the big picture.
Yeah, I agree. I think daily total helps you keep on track for
Yep.
that weekly total. But if you vary by a couple hundred over one day and then a couple hundred under another day, like that's totally fine.
It's normal. There are things that get in the way.
But being
Now,
human.
with that, when we're tracking amounts, right, it'll give us a calorie number. I think that using these stupid, and I'm going to say stupid smartwatches is making people go insane because you track a workout and you're like, oh, I only burned 40 calories. Now I have to eat and change. Don't look at it. Just do the exercise, track your food, and then you'll be in a better headspace.
Yeah, I can't speak to those trackers because A, I don't use them. I've never have. And B, I'm just not super up on how accurate they are. You know, I imagine at this point, I would imagine some of them are getting kind of accurate.
Yeah.
I would hope. But I just think that there's so much variability in that it's really hard to know if you actually burned 97 calories or maybe you only burned 40 or maybe you burned 200. It's like, I don't know.
Well, we have a little bit of this to talk about in next week's episode, but when you exercise, you may only burn 100 calories during that exercise, but you increase your metabolic load over 24 hours to recover and replenish. So that doesn't tell you how many calories you'll continue to burn from recuperation.
Right. And
So
go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say, so paying attention to how much you're eating, and if you want to lose weight, just eat less and a small margin less.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know how in depth we were planning on going with this, but maybe it's worth just like mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to what you just said about exercise, it might say you only burned 100, but you're going to increase your metabolic load, you're going to burn more, whatever. So with diet, similar, and exercise has the same effect on your metabolism overall. Is your rate of metabolism, it changes over time.
Oh my, yeah,
So
over days and weeks.
over days and weeks, but also if you've been eating exactly 2,300 calories for the past 12 months, you've been eating that every day, I guarantee your metabolism after that 12 months looks different than it did before, if before you were eating like 3,000 or 1,600, whatever. So you've conditioned your metabolism to burn at a different rate, if you will, burn. So that's important to note. So when you take off your 10% reduction initially and you hang out there for maybe a couple months, then you stop seeing your progress. Well, that's kind of what's going on, is your metabolism has changed. It's not the same as it was when you first took off 10%.
Yeah.
And exercise has the same thing. So if you're constantly exercising at a similar load and intensity all the time, your metabolism has adjusted to that. And now, it's not really having the same effect as when you started. So I think that's just important to note. That's why calories in, calories out. Some people get really, it's a trend to say that calories in, calories out isn't a real thing.
Yeah.
But I think what they're getting at is this concept of your metabolism will change over time. And so it'll look like calories in, calories out isn't working. But what happened was the metabolism changed.
Yeah. So this is an important pro tip at this point. What I had on my notes at the bottom to talk about after is that if you are insured, which most people are, there's a pretty good likelihood that your insurance will cover a dietitian's visit. Now, I'm not saying that this is an end all be all. Just like coaches, dietitians, they have a certification and a credential, but they're good and bad. They're good and bad doctors, good and bad plumbers. We're just protected because they have a certification, right? So call up your insurance and see if they'll give you a free session with your dietitian. Maybe they do a blood draw, they check your biomarkers, they check your body fat composition, they check your weight. It's an objective place to start. And in 3, 6, 9, 12 months, use that service again. I'm serious. It's probably free.
I think that's awesome. I never thought of looking into that myself, but I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And sometimes we have people who don't want to do nutrition coaching today or tomorrow, the next month. And I always tell them, just like, do it. It's literally free. There's no reason not to.
Yeah. My mom, about a year ago, I think, my mom I don't think she went to a dietitian, but she just went to her doctor, and they do blood work, and then she does some blood work. And a lot of the markers, they gave her this like test. It was like digital on her phone. So she got all the results on her phone. And a good bit of the markers were like not good. They were in red. And so at that time, she asked me, like, what can she do for her diet? I gave her super basic stuff with diet, like a super basic approach. We didn't go into tracking even at all. It was mostly quality of food and a little bit of quantity, just because I knew that she wasn't quite getting enough of certain things, but nothing crazy. It was super basic. And then all of a sudden she goes back 6 months later, gets that blood test again, and everything's in the green.
Wow.
And it's like, so something as simple as the blood work, it may or may not be an accurate predictor of your mortality, but it's definitely a peace of mind to know when you go and get that blood work done.
Well, you could go. Did she lose weight?
No. She didn't have weight really to lose.
Right. So she did a new diet for a certain amount of time and saw no body composition change.
Yeah, no body.
But on the inside, her biomarkers, you would argue now that she's healthier than she's ever been. But if she took before and after pictures, if she took her measurements, there's no change. So it's important to have those additional pieces of data. If you're a data-driven kind of person, I guarantee she feels better. I guarantee she's sleeping better just because her body is functioning more effectively.
Yeah. And just like, our parents are in their 50s, in the 60s, right? And it's like, when you get to be that age and you go to the doctor and they tell you that a lot of markers aren't looking good, that's not really you don't feel great there. You start to worry about those things. Maybe right now, if somebody told you your blood pressure was high at 28, you wouldn't worry too much about it maybe. But when you're 58, you'd start to worry. So it's nice to have that peace of mind.
Yeah, food tastes really good with a lot of salt on it. So my blood pressure is...
It really does.
So I have foods, then quantity, total number of calories. And then the next step for me would be starting to talk to macros. Now, what's important to know is we will not move on to macros until you prove that it is easy for you to track your foods. And then it's easy for you to track your total number of calories. Macros, now we're starting to dial things in, and you're getting good at paying attention to what you're eating.
Yep.
So this is a skill that could take 9 months to get to. So what is a macro? A macro, you have protein, carbs, fat. Protein, 4 calories per gram, same for carbs. Fat is 9 or more than double. And then you have like alcohol, and like fiber is like a different category, but you shouldn't use alcohol to track your macros, I guess.
Hopefully, if you're tracking your macros, you're not consuming large amounts of alcohol also.
I did read this study about an exercise physiologist at some university. He put on weight and then he lost weight on beer and Pringles just to prove that CICO, calories in, calories out, is a thing. So you can do it. I wouldn't advise it, but you could do it.
Yeah.
So
no, I think that's a good point though. The macro thing is a whole nother level of detail. And if you do have to, I've been there. Like I said, nutrition's hard for me. So like, I know what it's like to track almost everything, but not count that extra scoop of peanut butter or whatever it might be.
So you would avoid it. You just wouldn't write it down.
Well, I mean, I've been there, is all I'm saying.
Okay.
So if you're tracking and you're trying to go with tracking macros and you lose sight of the calories, then yeah, you're not going to see the progress that you think that you're hoping. If you're not being really meticulous about it, it's pointless. If you're not tracking absolutely everything, you might
Yeah.
just be tracking nothing. So I agree.
So, generic recommendation here, just like 2,000 calories a day. The easiest way to start for macros, 30% of your calories should be from protein, 30% of your calories should be from fat, 40% should be from carbohydrates. So, on a 2,000 calorie diet, that's 600 calories of protein and fat, 800 calories of carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So this is where things start to get contentious because you have the keto people and the low carb people and the intermittent fasting people and the carnivarians.
Carnivorous.
I'm okay, carnivorous. And then you have like the zone people. So the reason I go 30, 30, 40 is because that will work for most people most of the time.
Yeah, definitely. Um,
Talk
yeah,
to me about macros for keto.
yeah. So like I am a keto intermittent faster and by definition low carb as well, since that's keto. Uh, but I'm not like super religious about it, I guess you would say. But what I would say is keto is there's different recommendations for what the carb intake can be. It ranges. The most extreme versions seem to range like 30 grams of carb per day. That's the most extreme that I've seen.
Yeah, that's like
Okay.
less than 10% of your total caloric load.
Oh, definitely. And then uh I go up to 100 for myself personally,
Mm-hmm.
just knowing that I'm active and I'm in the gym all the time. So I give myself the leeway to go up to 100. I usually land somewhere around like 70.
Cool.
And I've only been doing this, by the way, for about 5 weeks maybe,
Yeah.
keto part of it. And then the rest of I get about 100 and maybe 120. I'd have to check and see exactly what it was. Fat and about 170
And those are grams.
grams. Yeah. And then about 170 in protein.
You're pretty low calorie.
Yeah, like the numbers I've been saying about 22 to 2300 this whole episode, that's kind
Yeah.
of where I land. Yeah, it's about 20, probably 2300 on an average day.
Yeah. And looking at you, I would say that 23 is right, but those numbers sound low.
Maybe they are. I have to like, so I use my MyFitnessPal
Mm-hmm.
tracker, and at this point I just know like I have the meals that I eat are actually saved.
Same meals all the time.
Yeah, so I don't have to actually pay attention to the tracking part of it.
Yes.
I can go in there and I have my keto lunch set up already. So I just click keto lunch and
Perfect.
it's the same all the time. So I don't really look closely anymore at what the splits are exactly. So, I mean, we could look right now.
So on keto, the protein, when I look at it, should stay relatively unchanged. We're talking maybe up to 40%. So that's still on 2,200, that's like 900 calories of protein.
Yeah.
So if you shoot that too high and you're keto, that's not really true keto. Keto is just carbs down, fat up.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually have one of it's changed slightly in the past 2 weeks, but the actual split, this is 2234, 2,234 calories.
Yep.
It is 85 grams of carbs, 165 fat, and 174 protein.
Nice.
So, and I think it can even give you like a pie chart breakdown of your calories. Although I'm struggling to figure that out right now, but I don't know. I can't figure that out. Anyways, that's the split that I'm on. And it might not be true keto, although maybe it is. I'm not sure because I was eating roughly 170 grams of proteins before, but
Mhm.
maybe that's just too much either way. I don't know. For me, it feels right. So that's what I go with. I weigh about 180. So I go with 100 and somewhere between 100 and on the low end 50 and on the high end like 190. Those where I've been over the past like 2 years. I've fluctuated between those ranges. 150 grams of protein a day, gone up to as high as 190 a day, just with different diet like experiments.
Yeah. So then with your macros, do you play with percentages first, or do you play with just total number of calories, or what's the first thing you adjust if you're not making a composition change? Or are you on maintenance right now?
I would say right now I'm probably on maintenance, but I would like to go leaner. So I got to change something eventually. Usually I start with the calories, like we said. So I'll just toggle the calories down. And then what I do is I try and make sure that I'm keeping protein consistent.
Yeah.
So if I want to have roughly 1 gram of protein per pound, so I'm going to be somewhere in that range, like I said. So right now I'm at 175. We'll keep it there.
175.
So then what I would do is I would look at carbs since I'm doing keto, and I would say, okay, well, I don't want my carbs to go over whatever it is. Let's call it, it's at 85. Let's call it 85. So if that's going to be locked at 85 and protein's going to be locked at 175, then what do I got to do to fats to bring my total calories down by, let's call it 200?
Yep.
So what do I got to do there? And then that's how I would approach it.
Yeah. And changing one variable at a time is definitely the way to go.
Yeah. Also, it's simple.
Yep.
And it definitely gives you more of an insight into what's working and what's not. Takes longer, maybe, but yeah.
So the last two steps that I have in place for my 5-step plan to mastering diet is changing the quality of the foods that you're eating. And I specified on carbs because they're the easiest to have shitty carbs and good carbs. And then even after that, the highest level is micros. What's your micronutrient spread, which I would argue is a huge waste of time on that last step. But we're talking like the 80-20 principle, like what foods are you eating? That's going to help you the most. Then how much food are you eating is going to help you a little less, but still it's going to help. But once we get to tracking how much magnesium you have in your diet, you're a pro. This is beyond pro.
You're a pro. And honestly, to be completely honest with you, the furthest I go with micros is I take a multivitamin.
Yeah, easy. One shot.
The furthest I go with it.
Yeah. So like when I talk about carbs, the difference between carbs, like you can have a good vegetarian, and I call them like the pizza and French fries vegetarian. And then you can have like the rainbow salad at every meal vegetarian. They're both the same calorie wise. They're both identical energy nutrient wise, but the vitamins and the minerals are going to be way better if you're eating less dense, higher volume carbs. And that means more green and leafies and less potatoes and bread.
Yes, absolutely.
You end up, I mean, gorillas, they're huge. All they do is eat grass and leaves.
Yeah. I mean, so that's got to mean something, right?
I mean, we're basically brothers.
We're 90, whatever, 7%. I don't know.
I look like a gorilla. It's fine. So the trick is to just be a vegan and just eat leaves and bamboo all day, and then that'll get you nice and jacked.
So here's the thing. I want to be a vegan so bad.
I hear you and I agree.
I guess I could stop there. I want to be a vegan so bad, but I just feel like, okay, so this past week, I Googled how to get 180 grams of protein per day on a vegan diet. I Googled that. You could probably Google it right now. And every single result that comes up, every single one is, well, actually, you don't need that much protein.
Right? They're just deflecting.
Yeah, that's the answer every time. That's the answer every time. I Googled it. I clicked on at least 5 different links, and I was like, this is ridiculous.
I mean, the first 5 links on Google, that's basically the entire internet that matters.
It is. It is. So I was like, are you kidding me? And it turned me off completely. But I still really want to be a vegan because I get so sick of eating meat. I get sick of it. I genuinely get to a point where I don't enjoy it anymore, and I wish I didn't have to. So I was actually rewriting my diet earlier this morning, and I put in a lot more, like, these aren't the best choices, but trying to find non-meat options to get protein. So I put in more like almonds, more eggs, more peanut butter, more cheese actually, and whey protein. And so I can actually minimize the amount of meat that I'm going to be eating next week. So that's nice.
For
But
me, it's purely ethical.
I agree with the ethical part as well, 100%, which is why I would love to do it. But I also, I don't know, my ego isn't happy enough to give up the protein yet. If I didn't care about the protein, I could do it easily. I could go down to 80 grams of protein a day, and I would probably lose some significant muscle mass doing that. And my ego is just not ready for it.
Yeah, your wife would definitely be stronger than you.
She would.
She would. Well, let's do a little nutrition recap. Should you track? The question is, should you track what? Should you pay attention to the foods that you're eating? Absolutely. Should you pay attention to how many calories? Probably. How about your macro splits? If you've mastered the two previous, yes, but don't worry about the micros. Don't get caught up in the details. Tracking is good, especially for a little bit at a time, because you eat the same things very often. So just being aware is the first step, and it's going to get travel a long way. And get a free nutrition appointment with a registered dietitian by calling your insurance.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that. I love the steps that you outlined, like the order to progress. And even though the micros are like the ultimate tip of the pyramid, the highest level of, I don't know, development there.
Yeah, development, that's a good word.
I would say just actually put them on the bottom and just take that multivite. It's actually the hardest thing becomes the easiest thing if you just take a multivite. It also isn't going to change everything. So
no, your performance isn't going to increase
based off the multivite.
No. That's awesome. I like nutrition. I'm more and more fascinated by it as I age. And I say that as someone who's very young. So I imagine 20 years from now, hopefully I'm making more money and I can just pay someone to make all the decisions for me.
Yes, I will say yes. But just feeding off of the fascination with nutrition.
Feeding off of it. Good word choice.
Unintended. I myself, I would agree. I've become so much more into nutrition recently, and it's just the biggest bang for your buck. We've talked about this before. So if your life,
definitely talk about it again.
Yeah. And if your work-life balance gets out of whack and you can't get in the gym as much as you used to, or you can't be as active or whatever, this, that, the other thing, if you get your nutrition under control, it's a buffer.
Yep.
It's a buffer. So I can't say enough about it. You should definitely take it seriously if you're not already. All right. Yeah. On to our book review.
Yeah. We're going to try a new segment where we talk about a book that we both read and actually got a pretty good impact from.
Yes. So the book is The Four Agreements, and I only read it recently, within the past year.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you.
Oh, okay. I probably maybe even within the past 6 months, actually. But so okay, we both read it recently.
Mm-hmm.
Fun side note, I read it in Spanish, and I'm not fluent in Spanish. So there's a good chance that I missed a lot of the stuff, although I felt like I got it. So we'll see. But that'll make for an interesting conversation.
So for those of you who don't know, Don Miguel Ruiz is a Mexican author, and he is a spiritualist, and this is a fun word. He is an author of Toltec spiritualist and neo-shamanistic texts. Yeah. Okay. Neo-shamanistic.
That is a fun word. I like it.
Yes. His Wikipedia article, which is completely factual all the time, says that he is the best received among the New Thought movement and focuses on ancient teachings to achieve enlightenment.
Awesome. So are you on his Wikipedia right now?
I am.
Just real quick, how many like other books does he have? Does it list them?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books.
Awesome.
He should have stopped at 4 because that would have been a nice full square. I'd say full circle, but the 4 agreements.
I'm gonna have to check them out because I really did like. The only one I've read is the 4 Agreements, and I really did like it. So, yeah. Do you want to get into it?
Yeah. So I love books that you can distill into 4 lines.
This one's perfect.
Yes. Yes, it is. And that's why I liked it so much. But I didn't feel like he dragged on at all. He got to the point. He gave me the example. He made me feel guilty for breaking one of the 4 agreements every chapter. And then he made me feel better saying that we just try our best.
Yes, exactly. The last one, try your best. All right, real quick, let's just say what the 4 agreements are just so everybody knows what they are.
I'll say them in English. You say them in Spanish.
Okay, great. Let me see if I remember exactly. Wait, you gonna go?
I'll go first. Okay, so the first one is be impeccable with your word.
And that was sé impecable con tus palabras.
Con tus palabras.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 2 is don't take anything personally.
Yeah, I love this one actually. And it is no te tomes nada personalmente.
I do like that one. Don't make assumptions, number 3.
No hagas suposiciones. I think suposiciones, I think is the word.
And then finally, I already alluded to this one, always do your best.
Haz siempre lo máximo que puedas.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are the 4 agreements. One thing I would say about this book is I tend to be somebody who, if you said those 4 things to me like 3 years ago, I would have just gone like, yeah, no duh, and what's the big deal? But this funny thing in life, like sometimes when things hit you at a certain moment, it all depends on whether or not you're ready for that thing, you know?
Serendipity.
Yeah, timing matters for sure. So you could have said these things to me 100 times over the past 10 years, would have got nothing out of it until I was in the right mental space to receive the profoundness of what's being said. So just so happens I was reading this book earlier this year at a time where I think I was just open to it, and it just hit me in a different way. So if you're listening right now and you're like, those don't sound that great, just come back to it in a year.
And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's what I would say. So before we go any further, that is just the timing of it for me was what made the difference.
So I want to start this one off with be impeccable with your words. So we have talked about this a lot at my job. So we talk about integrity because it matters a lot. And we were working with this company that suggested that we flub some integrity. You do some advertising, you don't necessarily lie, but you just don't tell the full truth. Like, oh, we've helped thousands of people lose hundreds of thousands of pounds. Here's some pictures that weren't our people. You know, it was like a marketing agency, and they were like, here, we'll just give you all this stuff, just do it and follow the plan and it'll work. And it didn't do well. No surprise. It was like disingenuous.
Yeah.
And turns out that when you talk the way you normally talk, you attract people who like you better. And then you can be more yourself, and that makes them happier. And those people are usually happier in general with you because they know what they were getting right off the bat.
Yep.
So that's a very specific example. And I think integrity right now is more important than ever. I don't want to go into politics, but politics.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I agree. This one was a little, I wouldn't say it was hard for me, but I would just say that I've never really used that word impeccable very much before. And so hearing like, okay, be impeccable with your words, it took me a little bit to kind of like process what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the word you're using, integrity, really does sum it up. So it's not just like don't tell a lie, but it's more so like, yeah, have a little bit of pride in what you're saying and
Yeah.
stick to it. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you say you're going to stand for something, stand for it, you know?
All the time. You have to be like firm, and it's who you are, not what you do.
Yeah, exactly. So I think integrity is a good way to put that. Have integrity. And if you do it, I mean, obviously I mess up all the time, but if you do it and you actually stick to that, if you are impeccable with what you're saying, think about the things you say all the time. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. If you are impeccable with it, then you will do this and you will do that and you will accomplish a lot more than if you're just wishy-washy with it.
Yeah, that's why this is the last 5 minutes that I'll talk the rest of my life. So you can be impeccable with your word if you never talk.
Yes, you can be perfectly impeccable.
Perfectly impeccable.
Um, yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to say about that one?
I just think this one's the hardest because just like you said, it's cool to say I'm gonna do and I wanna do. Maybe it's a good sign that people should say less and do a little bit more percentage of what you say so that you can slowly build up your tolerance to commitment to yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things I kind of relate it to, like, again, well, why can't you just say a bunch of stuff and accomplish some things, but still be like, what's wrong with that? You accomplish some things, but you say more. What's wrong with that? But I think it kind of goes back to, have you ever heard of just, there's like this, I think it's Jordan Peterson. Have you ever heard of him?
The name sounds familiar.
He's fairly popular. He's an author, and I think he has a podcast as well, but he's a psychologist, whatever. He wrote this book called something like the 12 rules, or I don't know.
Is it marketing? Is he a marketing guy?
No, he's like I believe he's a clinical psychologist, but he has this book that came out within the past few years of like these.
12 rules for life.
Yes, 12 rules for life. There you go. One of the ones he has in there, and I don't think he's the first person to say this by any means, but one of the ones he has in there is something like make your bed in the morning. And it seems like, why do I have to make my bed? Why can't I be super successful and not make my bed? But the idea is that it just ingrains a way of being in you that is that I am just going to always, keep a tight ship. I'm going to keep things orderly, and it doesn't seem like it's going to have a huge impact, but every day I'm accomplishing that one little tiny goal.
Yep.
And it's building discipline within me. It's building a habit, and that's going to over time manifest itself in other ways. So I think that's kind of how this be impeccable with your words rule is, or agreement is, because it doesn't seem like, why can't I just say I'm going to do this and then not do it? It's not hurting anybody. It's just I didn't accomplish my goal. But that chips away at you over time,
Yeah, and I want more people to do, I don't mean this like an offensive way, but like I want more people to do what they say they're going to do because there are so many cool things that people have ideas for.
Uh-huh.
And I just want more cool stuff.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think the more you say something, the more potential you have to bring it into being. So if you're saying a bunch of different things, let's just narrow your focus and limit how much energy you're spending. I'm going to buy a new car. I'm going to start a business about finance. I'm actually going to start a business about crypto. I'm going to start a fitness company. Like pick one, put more energy towards it, and it'll manifest, I think. Your energy will go towards that one thing. And I don't mean energy like, ooh, energy like you think about something and your mind puts more attention towards it. You have more bandwidth.
100%. I think I'm skipping agreements here, but just going off of what you just said, because I think about this all the time. I'm somebody who can easily get pulled in like 5 different directions. And I think about that, and I think about what you just said. And a lot of people say that. They say focus on one thing, you know, that'll obviously be the best chance of getting good at something. But I don't know. The one thing that this is agreement number 4, do the best you can, or
Yeah.
always do your best, you know? So basically the takeaway from that is not to judge yourself so harshly when you don't stick to the other agreements. And so for me, that's kind of how I approach that specific situation you're talking about. I get pulled in 5 different directions. And I know, Ty, if you just committed to this, that, or that you'd be way further along in any one of those domains right now, just if you picked one. But I don't know. I just enjoy the multifaceted approach. And so I don't judge myself so harshly when I know that I'm not doing maybe the most efficient thing.
So are you are you doing your best in all 5 of those things? Not saying you could do better, but with the energy that you have, are you doing the best that you can?
Yes, always.
So to me, I think you're checking off box number 4. Unless you're like half-assing 2 things because you just don't feel like it today.
Right, for sure. No, that's what I'm saying is I agree. I think I am doing number 4, and that's why I don't judge myself for not being further along in this domain or that domain, because I kind of enjoy how I'm doing it. And I also have this faith that, yes, it'll take longer, but eventually I'm going to be proficient enough in these different areas, and then connections will form that otherwise wouldn't have been able to if I was only in one domain. So that's kind of my approach. So I feel like I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah, and I think that's doing the best that you can is hard if you work for someone else. It's hard if you answered or someone's like, oh, you didn't do as well as I thought. But what's good to know is sometimes your best effort isn't good enough.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes your best is not good enough. And that would be that would be a sign to me that you're focusing on too many things and it is having a negative impact.
What if you're just not good at something?
Or if you're just not good at something. Sometimes we have to have these conversations.
Yeah, and it's okay to be bad at something, and it's okay to be bad at something after you've tried to be good at something. If you did try your best and you're still bad at it, pick something else.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's more fun.
I do want to go back to the other 2 because I
definitely
couldn't help myself skip ahead there. But which one is the second one again?
Don't take anything personally. And actually, Tim Ferriss has said another continuation of this. Don't attribute
Hanlon's razor.
Yeah, what is it?
Hanlon's razor.
Give it to me.
It's exactly what you're just saying. Do not attribute to malice what could otherwise be explained by stupidity.
Yeah, or incompetence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that follow-up. And I think it's like that resonates with me so much more.
Dude, I first heard that, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, something in that range. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And I always go to this most simple example of somebody cutting you off when you're driving. It's like 99 times out of 100, actually 100 times out of 100, it wasn't that they just didn't like you and they wanted to make you crash. You know what I mean?
They're just not doing their best driving.
Or maybe, yeah, that's probably
fair. Or they
fair.
are, and they're just bad at it.
They're just bad at it. But like 99 times out of 100, they didn't even see you. You know, it had nothing to do with you. And
yeah, in that situation, to keep myself calm, I have these 2 thoughts, and it depends. It's random which one comes up. But one of them is that person totally shit themselves, and they really need to get home.
Dude, that's fair. That's fair.
Like it's already in their pants. They're just trying. It's too late. They're suffering, and they need somewhere to go.
You can cut me off. That is okay.
Please. And then the other one is that person got their eyes dilated and didn't have a ride. Because I have been there, and you cannot see anything, and that's why you shouldn't be driving.
Yeah. Yep. That's funny.
They give you those like brick wall sunglasses, and it's still too bright.
Uh-huh. That's funny, man. But yeah, I love that. And when I read this book earlier this year, when I read Don't Take Anything Personally,
Hmm.
that's immediately what popped into my mind was that don't attribute to malice quote.
Hmm.
That's immediately what popped into my mind. And I was just like, oh, this is it. Like, this is definitely something to live by.
It just calms you down a notch because you being angry is going to solve nothing.
Yeah, because most people, when they do whatever it is that they do in their life, regardless of what level of impact it has on you, they weren't thinking about you. They didn't do this to do something negative to you. They didn't take your client at the gym so that way you wouldn't have a client.
Yep.
It wasn't because they don't like you, or they didn't take the last pizza slice because they think you're fat and you need to lose weight. You know what I mean? Maybe they did. I don't know.
You have
But
some different friends than I do, I guess.
but you know what I'm saying, right? Like
Yeah.
it almost never has anything to do with you.
Hmm. Almost.
Almost.
But still don't take it personally, especially if it's work related, because so many people I know get fired up at work in a bad way.
Yeah.
And that you just going to work, clocking in, clocking out. No one really cares about you in a good or bad way. They're
Yeah.
just doing their thing, and you're just something that they have to deal with as part of their job.
Yep. Exactly. Totally agree. So I do love this one, and I think that live by it for sure.
Yeah, and I mean these four tie into each other, right? So don't make assumptions. I'm not assuming that person cut me off because they think I cut them off. I'm actually making this imaginary play in my head that they have poop in their pants.
Yep. Yeah, I know that one does tie into the other one really well.
Hmm. But I think there's a little bit of a difference, right? So, I mean, the second part that we slapped in, the fifth point is, don't attribute to malice. That kind of summarizes the middle two by
Yeah, it
themselves.
does. It does. It ties them both together.
But
Um,
yeah, I liked the book in general. It was an easy read. The big words or the letters are big, not that many pages.
yeah,
But
it was.
I am happy to support Don Miguel Ruiz.
Yeah, same. There was one part of the book. I'm gonna assume, although I'm not supposed to, I'm going to assume that it was in the "Don't Take Anything Personally" chapter. But this one it's the same thing we've been saying, but just the way he kind of framed it was just a different perspective to look at it. And it was along the lines of when people judge you, when they think you're doing, I mean, I guess good or bad, it could be either way. Whenever they make a judgment about you, but typically we care about negative judgments. So whenever they're saying like you shouldn't be doing this type of thing with your life, or you shouldn't have done that, or you should do this, that, the other thing, they're judging you from what they believe the world is supposed to be like, from how they believe the world is supposed to operate. And so you have to just recognize that we all have different beliefs on how the world should be and how life should be and how happiness and what a career should be and this, that, and the other thing. And so when somebody is giving you judgment or criticism, you just have to know that it's coming from their perspective, the way they view things, and it might not have anything to do with how you with the way you want to live your life, really. So I think that's just a powerful kind of thing to understand, is that everybody's coming from their own perspective. And if I'm telling you that you shouldn't be, spending all this time on the weekends doing that thing or that thing, that's just because I have a different view of life than you.
Yeah, and you still want me to be a winner, right? You want me to be healthy and happy. It's just how you see me healthy and happy in your own world.
Exactly.
So I do, I actually want the best for you, but my advice is not applicable or less applicable to you yourself.
Exactly.
I think everyone should read this book, or you can take the four principles and just watch a couple YouTube videos about them, and I think you'll get the gist of it.
You
But
can, but I would recommend reading it.
mhm.
I've listened. I think when it comes to books, anything that's like self development or in that realm, you got to actually read the book and go on the journey with the author.
Nice.
You know?
That's some good advice because I very much value a book, paper in my hands. It adds
Yeah.
a lot to the experience.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
Well, that's all I have for today, Ty. It's been a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure. I thank you guys for listening. Hope you got something out of this, talking about coaching and nutrition and this wonderful book. So,
For everything we talked about, there will be a link in the show notes.
yes, awesome. Click on them.
Yeah.
Subscribe, like, share, comment, all that fancy stuff.
And thank you to our sponsor, Air, for keeping everything light and comfortable.
Yes, have you been out of breath recently in your conditioning workouts? Try Air. Air.
Highly recommend it.
Awesome. Thank you guys.